Now Marion will give us this morning's dedication.
On this eve of Indigenous People Day, and in the honor of our Native siblings, we pause to acknowledge the painful history of genocide and the forced removal of Native peoples from this territory. We acknowledge that Cameron UMC, along with our neighboring communities, the state of Colorado, and the United States of America, reside on the homelands of Indigenous peoples such as the Cheyenne and the Arapaho nations, who were the original stewards of the land around our church community. We acknowledge the atrocities committed against our Native siblings in the Sand Creek Massacre by Reverend John Evans, who was an ordained elder in full connection in the Methodist Church. Therefore, with deep humility and hopes for a better human condition and consciousness in the days to come, we dedicate today's worship to all persons who have been displaced, conquered, or enslaved, and to their descendants who have needed to strive beyond this legacy of oppression.
It is an honor to introduce Dr. George Tink Tinker today. Dr. Tinker is a citizen of the Osage Nation on a territory surrounded by the U.S. state of Oklahoma. He is also the Cliff Baldrige Emeritus Professor of American Indian Culture and Religious Traditions at Iliff School of Theology, where he spent 33 active years teaching. For nearly 3 decades, he volunteered both administratively and traditional spiritual leader at the Four Winds American Indian Council in Denver. During those 4 years, Tink was also very active with the American Indian Movement of Colorado and served as the chairperson of the AIM Elders Council. If there was a formal American Indian community protest, Tink was there on the street, adding his political voice to the movement efforts. As a scholar, Tink has written extensively both books and nearly over 100 journal articles. Missionary Conquest, and here are some of the books that I actually read because I was a student of Tink's in the master's program and also in the PhD program. Missionary Conquest, The Gospel in the Native American Culture, Spirit and Resistance of Political Theology and American Indian Liberation, and Redskin, Tan Hide, a book of Christian history bound in the filleted skin of a Native American. Also, Tink was the champion for removing that particular book from the Iliff School of Theology's lobby. Tink, as a professor, challenged us to move beyond our status quo thinking and to critically think about issues in our society. As a student at Iliff, I took every course that he taught, and as a PhD student, I had the honor of taking my post-colonial theory comp with Tink Tinker. Tink Tinker is a person who will challenge your thinking, will challenge you to think beyond the ordinary status quo, and it is my honor to now introduce Tink Tinker to you. Thank you.
How wonderful to be with all of you. I'm so grateful to Pastor Jackson for inviting me to do this. I hope my voice is strong enough and you all can hear it. I am struggling a little with my voice. It's wonderful to be here with Pastor Jackson and Dr. Jordan Fields, who always treat me with respect by pretending that my first name is Doctor. I much prefer to be Tink, especially now that I'm retired and I'm busy telling people I used to be Dr. Tinker, but now I'm just Tink. Nevertheless, you know, I move around the country now virtually, giving talks still because of the expertise that Iliff gave me the privilege of having the time to develop. It's good to be with you on National Coming Out Day and this Indigenous Peoples Day, which seems to be slowly replacing, for many people, many states, the old holiday. Reverend Jeremy and I have a long tradition in this coming out day that goes back, I believe, 45 years to 1975, Jeremy, when he himself was coming out, and I was one of the people he came to talk to. At least I was the bumbling idiot that he chose to share that with. And I tried as hard as I could to be open and sympathetic and supportive. And maybe I did some good along the way. Certainly it was part of my learning to be a part of that, Jeremy, and I'm appreciative for that. Eight months ago, I spoke for the umpteenth time to a legislative committee hearing on this bill to replace Columbus Day holiday as a state holiday in Colorado. We've been doing that for 31 years, protesting on the street, going to the state legislature, being stuffed by one Democratic legislature and governor after another. One of those was himself, Mr. Hickenlooper, now a candidate for Senate, who told us we were immature in trying to get the Columbus Day holiday replaced. Finally, in March, the Senate passed the bill, and in April, the governor signed the bill, getting rid of the Columbus Day holiday in the one state that was the first state in the United States to pass a formal Columbus Day holiday. So that was really an important, momentous moment, not just for American Indians, but for all Coloradans, and with ramifications across the continent. And of course, yesterday I woke up to the news that our current sitting president had made the announcement of the National Columbus Day holiday, articulating the words, "Sadly, in recent years, radical activists have sought to undermine Christopher Columbus's legacy. These extremists," he went on to say, "seek to replace discussion of of Columbus's vast contributions with talk of his failings, his discoveries with atrocities, his achievements with transgressions. So I come before you as a non-repentant, radical, activist, extremist this morning." Of course, Trump went on to say, those of us who do that are standing as those who spread hate and division. I'm sorry, folks. If I'm spreading hate and division, I apologize, but I am standing up for my people. And the Columbus Day holiday was and continues to be a not so subtle celebration of the genocide against American Indian people, a celebration of the massacres, a celebration of the theft of the land itself. I've got to say that much simply because I've got to respond to this presidential proclamation. But what I really want to talk about this morning is what the title on your order of worship says: an eagle fan, beads and feathers, property, and relationship. As you can sort of see, I'm sitting here with my eagle fan. It's with me whenever I speak in important contexts. It goes with me everywhere I go in the world. A couple of weeks ago, I read on CNN that a woman from Australia, a tourist, bought a $19,000 alligator skin purse in Italy, only to have customs confiscate it from her when she re-entered Australia and destroyed it as contraband because she failed to get the proper import license to bring it into the country. Now, quite apart from who can afford to spend $19,000 to buy such an ugly purse, it generated a flashback moment for me. Because about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I think it was, I went to Australia. And wherever I go, I take my laptop, two things, my laptop and an Eagle fan. And as we got close to landing in Australia, I read the customs form carefully and realized these people are serious. They seemed to be threatening me with bodily harm, imprisonment, if I failed to claim every animal part that I had with me. Now, usually I think they mean fresh meat or fresh groceries. But in this case, I was intimidated enough that I wrote up a note and attached it to my customs form that I have this relative with me that travels with me. Oh, what pandemonium ensued when I went through customs. First one agent and then another, escalated up to a supervisor, to another supervisor, to another supervisor. They were all respectful because I asked them, you can see it, but please don't touch it or handle it. It doesn't have a relationship with you. It lives with me. And I have responsibilities to this eagle. Finally, they bumped me up to the top supervisor, the guy who was going to decide whether I got back on that airplane and spent my $2,000 round-trip ticket in a fruitless effort to enter Australia, or whether I got to stay. He suddenly looked up from the fan and looked at me and said, "Mate, are you native?" I said, "Yes, sir. I'm American Indian." He waved me through the gate into Australia and said, "Get out of here." And I was none too quick to make that move, and my fan kept me strong through that whole post-colonial conference with some native people, Aboriginal people in Australia, and enabled me to speak to them and share with them as they spoke and shared with me. I remember that story because it's about relationship. See, as Vine Deloria said, the main difference between the Euro-Christian world and the Indian world is that the Euro-Christian world reduces everything to objects, to property. And Indians see everything as alive, as something with which we have a relationship. I have a stone here that a friend brought me. He dug it up on his work site just this way and brought it to me. Now, I happen to be Eagle Clan, so this eagle wing is especially important to me. And he knew this rock would have special significance for me. I don't know if you can see it, but it's in the shape of an eagle. as Pastor Jackson and Dr. Andriette know, in my old age, I have a daughter who came to us already damaged in her young life at the age of barely 4. She's a close relative. She's my brother's granddaughter. But when we adopted her, she asked us if she could call us mom and dad. So she's my Mina. Mina's the Osage word for oldest daughter. Even though she's only 11, she's my oldest daughter. She's my only daughter. Her brothers are all in their 30s and 40s. But she's a different clan from me. She's Buffalo Clan. So her close relatives are the Buffalo Nation. Well, mine are the Eagle Nation. Now, the one thing she takes very seriously is her responsibility back to the Buffalo Nation on behalf of the Osages is to maintain the relationship between the Buffalo and the Osage people. That means while the rest of the tribe counts on buffalo protein for our buffalo protein for our food and sustenance, she and all of her buffalo siblings in the Buffalo Clan abstain from eating buffalo. That meant when I adopted her, I had to make a commitment to her to observe her dietary restriction and not eat buffalo at home or when we go out together. That's a biggie because I much prefer buffalo to beef. It tastes much better and it's much healthier. But that's her responsibility, and I share that with her because she shares my clan as much as I share her clan. That's our responsibility to one another and to the world around us. So a lot of what we keep, like our eagle feathers, this is my daughter's eagle feather. She pulls it out whenever we have ceremony, and she'll hold it through ceremony. She'll take it to dances and hold it when she dances. This is a rattle that I made years ago out of a Colorado mule deer horn and buffalo hide with stones that I was permitted to take from an anthill out at Tall Bull Memorial Grounds south of Highlands Ranch. This is a Canadian rattle made out of deer skin. Once that deer was taken in a sacred way and the meat was preserved, the hide was also preserved. And one of the things that Anishinaabe people up there made was this rattle. That's more of a dance rattle because it's louder. Those are all our relatives. I think the biggie is that we see everything, even the stones in my rattle and the rock that makes this eagle is alive. From the time my daughter, her name is Doope, a Buffalo Clan name, it means they will gaze upon you. From the time she was in kindergarten, her teachers have tried to tell her, teach her how to distinguish between what's alive and what's inert, what's biotic and what's non-biotic. And from the time she was 5 or 6 years old in kindergarten, she talked back to her teacher and said, stones are not inert. They're not non-biotic. They're alive. I know they are. At which point the teacher said, oh yes, we should remember that some people, like American Indians, believe that stones are alive. Oh, believe is a Christian word. We don't have it in our language. We don't believe that stones are alive. It's our experience of the world. It's our relationship with the earth. We know these stones are alive. And we call the stones we bring in to this ceremony called Iungla, sitting with the stones, or white people call it sweat lodge. Call them by their proper name. We call them Tonka, the old ones, the oldest living things, those who are alive before anything else. Tonka, or Tunkashila, Tunkashi, those oldest things with whom we have a deep relationship and lies an intensifier, Tunkashila, which white people translate as grandfather. In Lakota, first of all, it includes grandmother. It's not gendered. See how quickly Christians gender stuff? And yet, for us, that gender doesn't exist in Tunka or Tunkashila. And secondly, Tunkashila is a plural as much as it is a singular. So we're talking about the grandparents, plural, all of them. Then we've got to deal with what we gave up in order to become Christian or Euro-Christian. And the biggest thing we had to give up was our relationship with the earth itself, with the grandmother. Because you see, we didn't just give it up. It was taken away from us, because the first thing the Christians did was convert the earth, the land, grandmother, into sacred property. They built fences around it, called it mine, so it became private property owned by individuals. And everyone who lives in a home in North America today lives that new rule of property, whether you're renting from a landlord who holds the mortgage, or whether you and the bank hold the mortgage together, or you claim ownership. And the romance is that you all get to celebrate that, because now you've put laws in place that make it that way and they work in your favor. It's easy to celebrate. It's easy to feel good about being American and forget the history of Christian violence. And I want to say it specifically that way. And Dr. Fields, Jordan Fields, understands this, because she co-taught my last quarter at Iliff. She co-taught with me in this course on modern Christianity, where we made that point. Christian violence has created those laws, has created that liberty and freedom that white Americans get to celebrate so easily, that it's not quite so easy for Black Americans, who have to look over their shoulder every time they walk the streets, wondering if they're going to get killed for jaywalking. See, if we want to participate in any of this, we have to learn to live the way you all live. We have to learn to see the world the way you all see the world. We have to learn to own private property and believe in that. And I will use the word believing in private property because that's a myth. This rock has its own life. It stays with me. My Eagle fan has its own life. I don't own it. It stays with me. And every time we eat, I feed these wanagi along with all the ancestors. A little bit of our food goes to them. See, we too are being asked to convert land to property, but I want to turn things upside down. I want to invite you all, for the sake of grandmother, the earth who gives us life itself, I want to invite you all to begin to experience the world the way we experience it, to see the world the way we see it, to see everything around you as relationship, as close relatives, and to celebrate your responsibility to that tree, your responsibility to the weeds, your responsibility to the squirrels and the bears, your responsibility to the eagles and sparrows, your responsibility to the mountains and lakes and rocks and rivers, so that you can begin to live in harmony and balance instead of celebrating that intrinsic Christian, anthropocentric human lordship over everything under you in that grand hierarchy that comes out of the Euro-Christian philosophical, metaphysical experience. Instead, put yourself on this level. Collateral egalitarian. No better than the roly-polies that my daughter cautions me not to step on when we walk down the sidewalk in the early morning. We're all in this together, and instead of trying to rescue the earth for the sake of human beings, we need to rescue the earth for the sake of the earth herself. And rest assured, the earth will survive this infectation of human beings even if we disappear. So maybe it's time to begin to learn to live in harmony and balance with the mother. Kakunayu all. Thank you. Blinde wiach no.
My Cameron family, in this one worship, our theme for the month of October, This Is Us, National Coming Out Day, and Indigenous Peoples Day all came together with the brilliance and the wisdom of Dr. Tinker. I agree with Dudley in that I too have a vision. I am crazy enough to believe that one day our world will be a world without anger and it will be a world with peace. However, I have lived long enough to also realize that we cannot be that world until we have truly a national coming out day of confessing the many complexities and facets of who we are. This is us. We are a people who gladly say happy birthday to Brooklyn or anyone on their birthday. We are a people who come together as we did on yesterday to celebrate a legend and one who is now in the cloud of witnesses, one of our most recent ancestors. We are a people who love bluegrass, who will even today have a Cameron Jam from 11 to 1 on the lawns of our facilities. We are a people who unanimously voted to be a reconciling ministry. We are a people that have a tremendous ministry in helping hands, feeding the hungry. We are a people doing good trouble, hosting our first town hall to educate the public on voting through the lens of racial equity. But we are also a people that must confess that we do not honor life in all living things. We don't even honor that all things live, as Dr. Tinker said to us today. We are a people who have taken life, sometimes with guns, sometimes by putting our knees on someone's neck, but sometimes simply by killing others slowly, by calling and compelling and forcing others to live the way outside of their culture, to live one way, conformity, killing people slowly because they never get to show up as they really are. Dr. Tinker, I am humbled and honored to have you with us today. I said to Andriette on yesterday that I am amazed, one, that you were available, and I am in awe and humbled that you said yes. Thank you for preaching, proclaiming prophetic truth. Thank you for challenging us to raise our consciousness and calling us to revolutionary change, to true humanity. Cameron, what a beautiful worship. We welcome you to stay with us after worship to engage in dialogue with Dr. Tinker. Let us go forth now, remembering that all things live and that we should honor all life. May the grace of God and the sweet communion of God's Holy Spirit rest, rule, and abide with each and every one of us until we meet again. Let us all say together, Amen, our women, Ashe, Namaste.